This conference will now be recorded.
Screen proudly PPT. Okay, we will start the class. Today we are going to discuss first topic is bronchiectasis. Okay, am I clear? So this is a condition characterized by chronic permanent dilatation and destruction of bronchi due to destructive changes in the elastic and muscular layers of bronchial walls. The name itself is indicating that it's bronchiectasis. In a Greek word, that is bronchi means like windpipe. Ectasia, you already know that is the dilatation of the walls or vessel walls. Any dilatation, you call it as ectasia. That's the name called as the bronchiectasis. So bronchiectasis, we already discussed, is an irreversible condition. It's not a reversible. That's why it is a chronic permanent dilatation and destruction of bronchi. It could be due to any reason, and it is of mostly of non-specific and unrelated antecedent events. We cannot tell particularly bronchiectasis is due to this or that because it is an end stage of so many diseases, and this is almost like permanent destruction. We cannot revert back that bronchial wall into the normal thing. It may be diffuse or localized, resulting in impairment of the drainage of bronchial secretion, resulting in pooling up of secretions and all other things. So this is the pictorial representation of bronchus and bronchiectasis. You can see the normal bronchus where the outer wall, cilia, mucus and mucus gland. Here in the bronchiectasis, what is happening is first there will be loss of cilia, so impairment of mucociliary clearance, so resulting in increased of mucus secretion and thereby resulting in the destruction of. Am I clear? Anyone answer? Am I clear? Shall I continue? Please tell. Anyone, please answer. Am I audible or not?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
sir. So this is the same thing. First diagram represents the normal airway, and the next is like airway with bronchiectasis, where the widening of the airway, that is called as dilatation, along with excess of mucus. So resulting in scarring and thickening of the airway wall. Coming to the etiology, we already discussed bronchiectasis is like a non-specific thing. It could be due to end stage of so many diseases, and we cannot predict every time. But in the children, the most common cause is cystic fibrosis. And other congenital causes that can lead to bronchiectasis are primary hypogammaglobulinemia, leading to recurrent infections, thereby leading to destruction of cilia and resulting in impaired mucociliary clearance, and by resulting in the same thing, the dilatation of the bronchi. Another one more condition that comes under congenital thing is ciliary dysfunction syndrome. Coming to the acquired causes in children, could be due to secondary to pneumonia, which occurs often as a complication of pertussis, that is whooping cough, and measles. And bronchiectasis and also other conditions like foreign body aspiration also we can see, where the aspiration of gastric contents will be there and resulting in destruction of cilia and all other things. So basically the etiology we classified into two types, that is one is congenital and another one is acquired. So we already discussed in congenital, cystic fibrosis is the most common cause. In acquired, already we discussed two conditions, one is secondary to pneumonia, another one more thing is like foreign body aspiration. Next is in other congenital conditions like syndrome, that is called as William Campbell syndrome, in which there is an absence of annular bronchial cartilage, we can see. They are also resulting in the dilatation of the bronchi, which is permanent. Another syndrome is Marvier-Kun syndrome. This is a congenital tracheobronchiomegaly where both trachea and bronchi will be enlarged. It is a connective tissue disorder. This also resulting in a condition called bronchiectasis. And other disease entities associated with bronchiectasis are right middle lobe syndrome. This occurs due to chronic extrinsic compression of right middle lobe bronchus by hilar lymph nodes. Another one more syndrome is yellow nail syndrome. In this condition also we come across bronchiectasis along with pleural effusion, lymphedema and discolored nails. So these are all the 4 congenital conditions or syndromes associated with the bronchiectasis. So if at all, if you want to write the etiology of bronchiectasis, congenital and acquired. In congenital, the most common is cystic fibrosis. In acquired condition, mostly followed by pneumonia due to either due to measles or pertussis or any foreign body aspirations. And these are the 4 syndromes that one must remember and one must write. So we already discussed, and some of the conditions I want to discuss here that predispose to bronchiectasis in children is we already discussed, like proximal airway narrowing leads to like airway wall compressions, maybe due to vascular ring or adenopathy result, like any intraluminal obstruction can also lead to proximal airway narrowing. And another one more thing is like airway injury. Like injury can occur to airway for any post-viral infections or any after lung transplantation or other conditions. Already we discussed one condition that is called as recurrent pneumonia or recurrent pneumonitis. And other things, the same thing like altered immune status like hypogammaglobulinemia and secondary abnormalities like HIV infection and any other immunosuppressive drugs. And the least common entity that predisposed to bronchiectasis in children that I didn't mention in my slides, that is like allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, like aspergillus infection. That is one more thing. Coming to the pathogenesis part, so the same thing, what happens is bronchiectasis resulting in because of that mucociliary clearance will be lost. So secretions will be pulled up, resulting in recurrent infection. That is a vicious cycle. So infection, inflammation resulting in airway injury, that is permanent, and thereby remodeling of the airway occurs. That's why it cannot revert back to the normal thing. So in brief, bronchiectasis is a consequence of inflammatory and destruction of structural component of the bronchial tree, mainly mid-sized airways, segmental and subsegmental bronchi. Microorganisms responsible for this are like most commonly Staphylococcus aureus, Klebsiella pneumonia, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Haemophilus influenza, and also other infections caused by Bordetella pertussis, measles, rubella, toga virus, respiratory syncytial virus, adenovirus. And the thing is like Mycobacterium tuberculosis. These also induces the chronic inflammation, progressive bronchial wall damage, and dilatation. So what happens is, so chronic inflammation, similar contributes to the mechanism by which obstruction leads to bronchiectasis. Till now we discussed. So what happens exactly is, here the protease and other toxins resulting in activation of toll-like receptors results in activation of nuclear factor K beta, thereby releasing of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So those pro-inflammatory cytokines are like interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 8, tumor necrosis factor alpha. These are all the pro-inflammatory cytokines. So all this what will do is, first is the main thing is interleukin 8, that is a chemoattractant for neutrophils. So these are the main inflammatory cells involved in the pathogens of bronchiectasis. So once activated, these proteases and other toxins, where all these ones activated, what will happen is neutrophils produce neutrophil elastin and matrix metalloproteinases like MMP8 and MMP9. So interleukin 6, interleukin 8, and tumor necrosis factor alpha are elevated in the patients in area of patients with bronchiectasis. So after upregulation of neutrophils, so these are the things like pro-inflammatory cytokines we can see in the mucus that is present or in the airway of patients with bronchiectasis. So whenever we do any bronchoscopy or anything, we have, if at all possible, we can send the levels of those interleukin 6 and interleukin 8 tumor necrosis factor alpha if possible, so that we can come to a conclusion these are pro-inflammatory cytokines are activated. So the mechanism by which bronchiectasis occurs in congenital forms is likely related to abnormal cartilage formation. This is another entity. One is due to inflammation and all other things. Another one already we discussed, both congenital and acquired. In congenital, like it is more or less like abnormality in cartilage rather than all these things. So this is the common trait. So what will happen? We already discussed. So all these things leading to difficulty in clearing all the secretions that are pulled up. So resulting in recurrent infections. That is a vicious cycle we already discussed, resulting in the permanent airway damage and remodeling of the airway occurs. The same thing, nothing more than that. These all the same thing. You have to remember this is the better diagrammatic representation one can write in your examinations, like what happens, microbial colonization, destruction of the airway, and the release resulting in early death due to cor pulmonale or lung infection, respiratory failure. This is the mucus plug due to more of excessive production of mucus. So coming to the mechanisms, what could be the probable mechanisms that occur? The same thing, that is obstruction can occur because of tumor, foreign body, or impacted mucus due to poor mucociliary clearance. Another thing is the external compression like bronchial webs and atresia. Second thing we already discussed, like inflammations. We already discussed a big list of infectious diseases can cause. These are the probable mechanisms. Another one is chronic inflammation that contributes to the mechanism by which obstruction leads to bronchiectasis. So these are all the things we already discussed. So these are the pro-inflammatory cytokines resulting in upregulation of all these things like neutrophil elastase, interleukin 6, interleukin 8, tumor necrosis factor alpha. These are the pro-inflammatory cytokines that are elevated in the area of patients with bronchiectasis. So coming to the pathological forms of bronchiectasis, what are the things that we can appreciate in CT in the case of bronchiectasis are, there are so many types. Usually bronchiectasis can be best defined in usually HRCT, that is called as high resolution CT scan. The first thing, the pathological form that can be delineated is cylindrical bronchiectasis, in which bronchial outlines are regular, but there is a diffuse dilatation of bronchial unit. Excuse me. Bronchial lumen ends abruptly because of mucus plugging. So in cylindrical, the thing is almost uniform dilatation. At the end, abnormal tapering you can see. So that is why it is cylindrical, diffuse dilatation we can see. In CT scan, tramline appearance we can appreciate. Next entity is varicose bronchiectasis, where the degree of dilatation is greater. And this is local constrictions causes irregularity of outline resembling that of varicose veins. So in previous cylindrical, where we see the entire bronchial unit as a diffuse dilatation without any constrictions. In a varicose thing like varicose veins, intermittent local constrictions we can see. So we can appreciate beaded counter appearance on a CT scan. Next is the saccular or cystic bronchiectasis. That is, bronchial dilatation progresses and results in ballooning of bronchi that end in fluid or mucus-filled sacs. Most severe form of bronchiectasis is saccular or cystic bronchiectasis. The next topic we are going to discuss is like some pulmonary cystic lesion. So one of the cystic lesion is the cystic type of bronchiectasis. And the next is pre-bronchiectasis. So this is due to chronic or recurrent endobronchial infection with non-specific HRCT changes. This stage may be reversible. So if anyone picks out in this stage, so it is somewhat reversible. Already we discussed bronchiectasis is an end and chronic inflammatory disease which is permanent, it is not reversible. So these are the probable types that one can appreciate on CT scan and probable definitions. So HRCT bronchiectasis, like clinical symptoms with HRCT evidence of bronchial dilatation may persist, progress, or improve or resolve. The resolving condition is the pre-bronchiectasis stage, usually remaining all are like permanent and persisting things. Next, one more thing is like established bronchiectasis. When we call it an established bronchiectasis, is like the previous thing, but with no resolution within 2 years of time, then we call it as clinically established bronchiectasis. So why all these things? Because early diagnosis and aggressive therapy are important because of to prevent the development of established bronchiectasis. See, if at all one can diagnose a case in the pre-bronchiectasis stage, so one can halt the progress of the disease, right? So that's why these are all the definitions one must remember, and one must act accordingly, and one have to early diagnose the case and to give the aggressive therapy to prevent the development of the so-called entity called as established bronchiectasis. This is the high resolution CT, as we already discussed, cylindrical, saccular, and cystic. In the cylindrical thing, where abrupt tapering is there and diffuse dilatation, and in saccular thing or varicose type, where local constrictions appearing like varicose veins. Cystic bronchiectasis appears like a cyst, so this is one of the cystic lesion of the lung. Coming to the clinical manifestations, the most common complaints in patients with bronchiectasis are like cough and production of copious purulent sputum. Younger children may swallow the sputum. Uh, Hemoptysis is seen with some frequency. Fever can also occur with infectious exacerbations. Along with these things, for any respiratory thing, the cough is the most common clinical feature. So in cough, this is a chronic productive cough that one must remember, and the sputum will be copious and purulent. Fever can be seen with infectious exacerbations. So these are the three salient points in clinical features. Next is the anorexia and poor weight gain may be there as the time passes, and one in physical examination typically reveals the crackles localized to the affected areas, and one can see wheezing because of the segmental collapse, and the segmental collapse we observe crackles and wheezing due to constriction of bronchi. In severe cases like dyspnea and hypoxemia can occur in the last, that is called as end stages, where in the respiratory failure occurs. These are the things. Whenever we do any pulmonary function tests, because based upon these clinical features, we can expect any of the pattern like obstructive pattern, like in bronchial asthma, restrictive pattern, like interstitial lung disease, or like mixed pattern one can observe. Coming to the diagnosis part, first one, before going to all these things, these are the definitive diagnosis like CT, chest, X-ray. These are the things that you must write in an exam. But first, we have to rule out other things, and by advising appropriate investigations, like we already discussed in congenital thing, bronchiectasis, cystic fibrosis is more common. So one should rule out if at all any possibility of cystic fibrosis we people are expecting. So one should do the sweat test. And then also we discussed like recurrent infections can lead to bronchiectasis, recurrent immunodeficiency conditions. It could be congenital or acquired, most commonly congenital. So immunological workup also one should do, like checking or testing for appropriate antibodies and all those things. And one more thing, chest radiography patients, we advise usually that is not specific, that tends to be non-specific. But what are the findings we expect in a bronchiectasis are like in, increase in size and loss of same, like the third line in chest X-ray, what we see is increase in size and loss of definition of bronchovascular markings, and also crowding of bronchi and loss of lung volume. In severe cases, the permanent dilatation we see is a honeycombing appearance. So what will happen, segmental collapse, that mucus plugging will be there. So automatically what will happen is like the opposite hyperinflation of lung, unaffected lung may be seen. And the next, already we discussed, the important thing is the section HRCT, thin section HRCT, that is called high resolution CT scan. It is a gold standard because it has an excellent sensitivity and specificity. So usually CT provides further information where the disease locates exactly, any presence of mediastinal lesions or not, and the extent of the segmental involvement. So even more precise, I didn't add, but the addition of any radio-labeled aerosol inhalation to CT scanning can provide even more information, but that is not necessary for you people. So we already discussed what will you see in a CT patients like bronchiectasis, already discussed, like cylindrical we see tram lines, varicose we see beaded contour. In cystic type you can see cyst and mixed forms, and the lower lobes are usually most commonly involved. These are all the CT pictures. You can see the cystic lesions. We already discussed. These are the points one should remember. what you can expect in a chest radiogram. We already discussed that it is not be specific. Usually they are non-specific, but one must know. Honeycombing is the last thing. Remaining all changes we already discussed. So how do you want to treat the child with the bronchiectasis now? So the first point is out. So first is supportive management. What to do? The initial therapy of patients with bronchiectasis is medical and aims in decreasing airway obstruction and controlling infection. So how will we control infection? First is like immunization for respective organisms like influenza and pneumococcal pneumonia, because recurrent pneumonia can cause the recurrent pneumonitis resulting in the same vicious cycle. So these are the things. First is to treat the infection, next is to clear the secretion, next is reduction of inflammation and treatment of the underlying problem. So how will you treat the infection? We'll treat with the appropriate antibiotics. Before going to antibiotics, one must drain the secretions that are present. So postural drainage techniques are very important to letting out all those secretions that are present in the bronchi. So postural drainage is utmost important, followed by controlling of infection. Along with antibiotics, we use bronchodilators whenever essential because of bronchoconstriction. The secretions will be pulled up and the child will be having wheeze and difficulty in breathing. So how many days we want to give antibiotics? That is, first is 2 to 4 weeks of parenteral antibiotics is usually necessary to manage acute exacerbations adequately. And one more thing, you can ask, what is an exacerbation? That is, one should define one major criteria is there, that is wet cough enduring longer than 72 hours, that is more than 3 days, with increasing cough frequency over 3 days, plus laboratory criteria will be there, that is like CRP, serum interleukin 6 levels. We already discussed like interleukin 6 and all those neutrophils and pro-inflammatory cytokines that will be seen in the airway of a bronchiectasis patient. So there are some major and minor criteria. Depending upon that, we define exacerbation. That is not necessary for you people. So in treatment, one must write like one must prevent infection, one must do adequate chest physiotherapy and postural drainage to let out of all these secretions, and one must give in an exacerbation of 2 to 4 weeks of antibiotics, that is IV antibiotics. So the antibiotics we choose are like amoxicillin and clavulanic acid, that is used mostly sufficient. And sometimes we need some long-term prophylactic antibiotics like macrolides, and nebulized antibiotics like tobramycin, colistin, and benzydronium are beneficial. And one more important thing is airway hydration. Why to maintain airway hydration? Because secretions will come out very fastly. So inhaled hypertonic saline or mannitol also improves the quality of life in adults with bronchiectasis. So and one more thing, for treatment, first we'll treat all the acute exacerbation, then one must treat the actual cause, what is causing all these bronchitis and all these things. If any underlying disorders like immunodeficiencies or any aspirations, if you find it out, those things must be addressed. And when localized bronchiectasis becomes more severe or resistant to medical management, at last resort is like segmental or lobar resection may be warranted. So these are the things. This is the physiotherapy to prevent or dislodge the secretions that are present in the chest wall. How to do is like cupping of the hand and properly give the pressure over the chest wall in different positions, because to let out all the secretions. That is why it is called as postural drainage. So this is the positional drainage and physiotherapy. Coming to the prognosis, children with bronchiectasis usually often suffers from recurrent pulmonary illnesses. What will happen? They obviously miss the school days. Growth retardation will be there. Osteopenia and osteoporosis will be there. So because of all these things, early recognition or prevention of predisposing conditions and usage of appropriate antibiotics will at least give the child a proper outcome and a proper way of living. So this is the end of bronchiectasis. I hope I am clear. Next topic we are going to discuss is pulmonary disease. I cannot go on everything on pulmonary cyst because this is a huge entity. Just I'll discuss some conditions which are important. But today's topic, you have to remember bronchiectasis. So we all know what is the cystic lesion in the lung. So a cyst is a round circumscribed space surrounded by epithelial or fibrous wall of a variable thickness. Coming to the etiology, there are many causes of cysts, so focal or multifocal cystic lung diseases. Coming to the congenital, that is important for us because we are discussing in a pediatric case. So congenital bronchogenic cysts, pulmonary sequestration, congenital cystic adenoid malformations. Coming to the infectious causes, in pulmonary tuberculosis, we can see cystic lung diseases, coccidioidomycosis, pneumocystis carini pneumonia, echinococcus granulosus, where you can see hydrated cyst. It can be seen in liver as well as lung, but lung it is uncommon or less likely. Lymphocytic interstitial pneumonias and desquamative interstitial pneumonia also we can expect cystic lesions in the lung. So next is the diffuse cystic lung disease, pulmonary Langerhans cell histiocytosis, lymphangioliomyomatosis, honeycomb cystic lung disease. These are very rare in children. These are the most things that we come across in adults. But I added because we may get, I don't know exactly what is the percentage of all these things. Just for the name, for remembrance, you have to remember. But important is those first three conditions like congenital thing, honeycomb cystic lung disease, miscellaneous conditions like cystic lung disease in Down syndrome. Another syndrome is called as Birt-Hogg-Dube syndrome and trauma. So coming to pediatric developmental cysts, this is the topic: bronchogenic cyst, pulmonary sequestration, congenital cystic adenoid malformation, lobar emphysema, bronchial atresia, lymphangiectasias, and pleuropulmonary blastoma, which is malignancy. So coming to the bronchogenic cyst, you need not remember everything, just for completion's sake I'm telling, and you have to know the names. So these are the cystic lung lesions will be there that one can expect. That's why I'm completing this. So am I boring? Are you hearing? Roll number 126. At least tell me that I'm audible so that I can continue my rest of the class.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So bronchogenic cysts are supernumerary. They are from the foregut buds disconnected and separated from the tracheobronchial tree to form a cystic mass during embryogenesis between 4th and 6th week of life. The most common site is middle mediastinum. Remote locations including the interatrial septum, neck, abdomen, and retroperitoneal space. So coming to the clinical features, what will we expect in a bronchogenic cyst? Usually they are asymptomatic and they are found incidentally. In infants, compression of the trachea or bronchi and esophagus. What will happen if any external compression is there? Automatically bronchoconstriction will be there. So it need not be intraluminal to produce a stridor, to produce a wheeze, or to produce dyspnea. So these are the cysts that are present outside the structures, and this they give the external compression on the structures, resulting in the wheezing, stridor, dyspnea, and dysphagia. And one more thing is intraparenchymal cyst. What is the problem with this intraparenchymal cyst? Is the cyst is within the parenchyma of the lung, so they result in the recurrent infections. So next is so the same continuation of the bronchogenic cyst, that is lined by secretory respiratory epithelium, cuboid or columnar ciliated, wall cartilage, elastic tissues, mucous glands, and smooth muscle. They do not usually communicate with the bronchial tree and therefore typically not air filled. It contains fluid, variable amounts of proteinaceous material, blood products, and calcium oxalate. These are the things. This is the cyst, arrow mark. This is the cyst. Coming to the complications, it can lead to fistula formation, either all ulceration of cyst wall, any superimposed infection, and hemorrhage. Coming to the sequestered lung, two types of sequestration one can expect, that is intralobar and extralobar sequestration. So extralobar, that is outside the lung. So it has its own pleural investment and systemic venous drainage. In intralobar form, it shares the pleural involvement within the normal lung and usually drains into the pulmonary venous system. So this is extra pulmonary, intrapulmonary sequestration. In extrapulmonary sequestration, see, it is outside the lung and it gets its separate supply from the aorta. In the intrapulmonary, the same thing, within the lung parenchyma. So this is the thing. So extrapulmonary outcome will be good because it can be resected. Intrapulmonary outcome will be not that good because it is within the lung parenchyma, so resection is difficult. So intralobar, automatically within the lung, so usually symptomatic. Early childhood or adolescence, we can see this with recurrence, and usually it presents as lower lobe pneumonias. In extralobar, it is usually asymptomatic, may have cyanosis and feeding difficulties. Usually asymptomatic. Why the child will have cyanosis or feeding difficulties? Because it gives an external compression over the trachea, bronchi, and all those things. And usually extralobar, this is associated with other congenital anomalies like diaphragmatic hernias, cardiac malformation, foregut anomalies. So the problem with this extralobar is usually it is seen with other congenital anomalies, so treatment will be difficult. What happens with intralobar is it presents as recurrent respiratory tract infections. So these are the two entities. So usually seen in the left lower lobe. On CT, it shows as homogeneous soft tissue mass, cyst containing air or fluid, focal emphysema or a hypervascular focus of lung parenchyma. Lung tissue is poorly developed and cystically dilated. Usually cysts are lined by columnar to cuboidal epithelium. Next important thing is congenital lobar emphysema. So coming to the congenital lobar emphysema part, it is an overinflation of one or more lung lobes, presumably due to various factors, including a possible obstruction, check valve mechanism, and bronchial wall. Usually seen in the neonatal period or infancy, males are more common than females. Left upper lobe and right middle lobe are most commonly involved lobes. So etiology, we can see nothing etiology in 50% of cases like idiopathic, bronchial obstruction found in 25% of cases. Allows collapse on exhalation, so valve mechanism resulting in air trapping leads to alveolar overinflation. Coming to the thing like intrinsic obstruction, intramural, defect in the bronchial wall, defective quantity or quality of cartilage, intraluminar, lesion in the lumen of the bronchus or mucus flux or redundant bronchial folds. Coming to the extrinsic obstruction, the same thing outside the bronchial wall. Like cardiovascular causes include some any vascular, sling mass, lymph nodes, bronchogenic cyst, oncological masses, all are the things. Extrinsic compression due to any reason. See clinical features. Moderate respiratory distress is most common, followed by cyanosis. Mild respiratory distress is seen in less than half. Asymptomatic, usually infrequent. And severe life-threatening distresses, we can see very less common, but most of the children are presenting with some amount of respiratory distress in case of congenital lobar emphysema. So this also exists with other congenital heart diseases. So one more thing just I want to tell you people is in other cysts only, like I want to continue this the same thing just in detail, like in congenital lobar emphysema only, like if at all, if you suspect any child with congenital lobar emphysema, if it is less than 2 months of age, uh, we need to observe and we have to perform two investigations. One is basic X-ray and one is CT chest. And if the child is already discussed asymptomatic, also the children will be presenting. So just we have to observe. If at all more than 2 months of age, children presenting with severe symptoms, so then one must interpret like what is there in the severe chest X-ray. What will happen in severe symptomatology is the like severe hyperaeration of lung fills because of that already discussed this point of valve mechanism and air trapping leading to hyperinflation. So CT scanning, we can see the herniation of lung. That into the shift of mediastinum one can observe because of the extra lobe that is hyperinflated. Ventilation perfusion scan one can perform. If at all mild to moderate symptoms, we have to perform all these investigations. Just we need to observe and we need to watch, nothing more than that. So this is congenital lobar emphysema. And one more thing we discussed here is we already discussed bronchogenesis, right? Pulmonary sequestration and congenital lobar emphysema we discussed, and one more thing is congenital cystic adenoid malformation, that is called as CCAM. Just for namesake and for continuation purpose, I'm just telling, just you people listen, that's all. So what exactly is means this congenital pulmonary AFA malformation rather than cystic adenoid malformation? What happens is, in this, it consists of dysplastic lung or any abnormal part of lung, usually mixed with the normal lung. Generally, it is confined to single lobe. So this congenital pulmonary disorder, usually rare, but prenatally we can detect this. Even remaining also we can detect, but prenatal ultrasound findings even more classified into like macrocystic, microcystic, and all other things, where the cyst can be even more finely defined into whether the cysts are multiple or single, whether the cyst size is less than 5 mm or more than 5 mm. So this is another entity, and in this type we come across almost like 5 types. We may not discuss everything, just for namesake, you people must remember. So what could be the reason for this congenital cystic malformation is that what happens is embryological injury before 35th day of gestation. If anything happens before 35 days of gestation with maldevelopment of terminal bronchial structures. So cysts are very common, cartilage is very rare. So obviously cartilage destruction we can see in any cystic lesions. So and also other things like altered growth factor interactions and all those things we can see in the developing thing or lung branching morphogenesis. So diagnosis, how can we get a diagnosis of congenital cystic adenoid malformation is like in utero by ultrasonography one can define. Already we discussed like prenatal ultrasound can delineate types, and this also usually associated with other congenital anomalies like hydrops and all those things. And even in antenatal period, mother may have experienced like polyhydramnias and every other possibilities of all these things and all these complications. So what are the clinical manifestations? The same thing, respiratory distress, recurrent respiratory tract infections, and pneumothorax. And sometimes this lesion may be confused with the diaphragmatic hernia because the lung usually are filled with like cyst like pattern which appears like a bowl. Where in the congenital diaphragmatic hernia, what will happen is this, the intestines through that foramen, it enters into the chest wall and it compresses almost all the lung things. So pulmonary hyperplasia and lung collapse will be there. So we can appreciate bowel loops in case of in chest wall in case of congenital diaphragmatic hernia. In CCAM, this all the cystic lesions of the lung may mimic the congenital diaphragmatic hernia, but both these are two different entities. So automatically when these cysts are there, usually they're asymptomatic mid-childhood with recurrent or respiratory tract infections. Sometimes, depending upon the type, and breath sounds may be diminished with mediastinal shift away from the lesion. That is where in anything, if at all any cyst or any mass that is compressing, automatically shift of mediastinum one must expect. So how will we treat? Coming to the treatment part, so antenatal intervention is well affected infants is we doesn't know, means if at all the child is having congenital CCAM. So the most commonly asked question is whether we go for a termination of pregnancy or not. So that is not till now that is not clearly established. But this is a potentially life-threatening condition, and these patients will have even more prone for carcinomatous or sarcomatous degeneration. So this is a life-threatening entity. So bronchogenesis, that is a treatable thing. Pulmonary sequestration, 2 types we already discussed. CCAM we just now discussed, and lobar emphysema. These 4 things are more than enough for you people in pediatric cysts. So these are the pediatric pulmonary cysts or lung cysts, and another topic is bronchiectasis. Am I clear? Any doubts? Any doubts? 109. Oh, she already left. Everyone gave your attendance. Please respond for this, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Whatever
Yes,
your
ma'am.
attendance. Okay. Doubts? Okay, any doubts you can ask me or else leave. That is okay. So I already saved your chat box attendance. So if at all anyone is there, just you give it or else I'll leave. I'll stop the meeting.